This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we're recording now. All right, we're calling the special meeting into session and entertain a motion to go into the closed session pursuant to the North Carolina Junior statutes for attorney-client privilege and potential real property acquisition.
I'll make that motion.
All right, second. All right, all in favor? All right, thank you. We'll be going into closed session. We'll be right back. Thank you. Cut your
This conference will now be recorded.
Makes me sick in my stomach to know it's gonna be there. Yeah, there is.
Well, I think you have a good Wi-Fi because you have all those connections. And
Like,
heck, and anything from me,
I got you.
I don't have contacts.
Things
Big
happen.
people in that.
Karma happens.
That's the thing. I don't understand why Raleigh. You know,
Big corporate.
dirty.
It is. It always comes back to bite you in it.
All right. Everybody ready? All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We had a special closed session we just came out of, so if you would, we just need a motion from the board to come out of the closed session so we can start the regular meeting. Okay, second?
I'll second.
All in favor? All right. Well, welcome, everybody.
We're back.
To our official meeting. Just want to have everybody, if you don't mind, please stand. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And is Mike here? You mind doing an invocation for us, please, sir?
Father, please, that everything that will be done tonight will be pleasing within your will. And we pray, Father, that you will rain away, that everyone will return home safe and sound.
Thank you. If you would, just remain standing. We'll have a moment of silence for any of our neighbors who may have passed away in the last month. Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, would you please check your cell phones? Make sure you got them off on vibrate. And I will ask any of the board members if they have a conflict of interest with anything that's on the agenda tonight. If so, please let it be known now. If not, we shall move along. I would like to acknowledge Ms. Walter, our third county elect. Thank you for being here this evening. And with no conflict of interest, we have the adoption of the agenda as it is. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, and I have a second. All in favor? Next up is the planning board report.
Mayor Baker, Commissioners, Planning Board Member Granger was originally slated to make a brief report to the board tonight. He's unable to attend tonight, so I thought I'd just pass along a brief summary of the Planning Board meeting that was held on July the 23rd. There were 4 ordinances, amendments to the UDO that were considered by the Planning Board. 3 of those are on your agenda tonight. They made recommendations to bring those forward to you. They pertain to the B20, B30 table of permitted and special uses, foundation survey requirements, and impervious area calculations. I won't get into the details of that now since we'll be talking about them here shortly. They did also talk about a proposed ordinance amendment that would essentially clarify the types of activities that require a zoning permit from the town. That ultimately was tabled to their next meeting in August. The key point that was being discussed was whether or not a zoning permit should be required if someone is simply clearing a lot with heavy equipment. So they had some thoughtful discussion at their meeting in July. I expect we'll have some more thoughtful discussion in August, and perhaps that will arrive on your September meeting agenda. They talked about a few other things during their comments, one of which was a request to relocate Channelview Drive. That has been previously discussed with the Board of Commissioners. I informed the Planning Board that we'll be looking at that in the future, but it's just not at the top of the priority list at this point in time. They also talked specifically about sidewalks on Taylor and Ocean Road, and that's something that's currently being considered with the Western Carteret Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. So it's a brief report from the Planning Board. And again, Member Granger apologizes for not being able to make it this evening.
Thank you, Frank. Next up is public comment. Dot, I believe you're it tonight. Could y'all, hang on just a second, Doc. You're at video. Thank you. Won't you be heard?
I just want to commend everyone that worked on the UDO and everyone that worked on the Board of Adjustment problem that we had, and how all of you are making our town what it should be, and you're going to keep people from having businesses which would bring in possibly others that would make problems. And I just want to say thank you all very much.
Thank you. Next up is the consent agenda. I have a motion for that.
I'll make the motion.
Commissioner Ritchie just made the motion.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Turn off your hearing aids. I'll make the motion.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Next up is a presentation on the dangers of vaping. Commissioner Barnhill, would you like to say anything or introduce?
So we have Ms. Bucklew and Ms. Betts. They work at the Carteret County Health Department, and they work in our schools to educate our kids on the dangers of vaping and some other things, which they'll highlight in their presentation. And they've got some PowerPoints to go over this with us. So
All right.
a lot of us has never been in the vape shop, so they can kind of tell us what goes on in these vape shops.
Okay.
All right, thank y'all for being here. Just go ahead and start at your leisure.
All right.
And I'd like to just add before I get started, Teresa Beardsley's here. She's the Region 9 Tobacco Prevention and Control Manager, and she's full of knowledge too. So between the three of them, if you guys have questions, I'm sure they can answer them.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So my name is Elena Bucklew, and I'm here with my coworker this evening, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Lizzie Betts.
So we're here this evening to just kind of go over the impact and the dangers of vaping. So we're going to talk about the e-cigarette epidemic in 2023. We will start with that. So tobacco use is the single largest preventable cause of death and disease in the United States. Each year, more than 480,000 people in the United States die prematurely from diseases caused by cigarette smoking and exposure to tobacco smoke alone. In 2023, an estimated 2.1 million kids were using e-cigarettes. For middle school students, the 2023 Youth Tobacco Survey data shows a slight increase from 4.5% to 6.6% in overall tobacco product use from 2022 to 2023. There was no specific product, including e-cigarettes, for which the significant increase occurred. However, the finding reinforces the importance of redoubling the FDA's comprehensive efforts to address all tobacco product use among our youth, including those in middle school. In the United States, youth use e-cigarettes or vapes more than any other tobacco product. E-cigarette marketing, the availability of flavored products, social influences, and the effects of nicotine can influence youth to start using or to continue vaping. Research shows that e-cigarettes are significantly easier for underage use to purchase than cigarettes. More than 10% of young adults ages 18 to 24 are vaping. The most commonly used device is a disposable. And then lastly, almost 35% of users vape 20 out of 30 days. The North Carolina Youth Tobacco Survey is administered every 2 years since 1999 in grades 6 through 12. It's a random sample of schools that are selected to participate. 3,892 students responded to the 2023 survey. E-cigarettes do continue to be the #1 tobacco product used by our youth. According to the 2022 National Youth Tobacco Survey, 22% of youth e-cigarette reports attaining e-cigarettes from a vape shop or a tobacco shop in the past month, and 17% from a gas station or a convenience store. So a little bit about the youth marketing. So e-cigarette marketing and promotions in retail stores do appeal to our youth. Tobacco advertising is the point of sale, provides an environmental cue that prompts individuals to buy the product, even when they are not originally planning on to buy one. One study found that 22% of daily smokers made unplanned e-cigarette purchases and that point of sale displays influence nearly 4 times as many as unplanned purchases as a planned purchase. The combination of easy availability of tobacco products and exposure to tobacco advertising and marketing normalize and promote tobacco use. No person should be exposed again and again to experiences that are known to be harmful regardless of their race, ethnicity, who they are, or where they live. Yet, tobacco companies use these characteristics to pressure consumers at the point of sale, employing a variety of tactics to affect where retailers are located and how tobacco products are priced, sold, and marketed. Children are more likely to smoke when they live or go to school in neighborhoods with a high density of tobacco retailers. Tobacco use rates are affected by where tobacco retailers are located and how concentrated or dense they are in that given area. Evidence also has begun to emerge that adult smokers who are trying to quit and live within a short walking distance of a tobacco retailer are less successful at sustaining cessation than those who are closest to that store. Addressing tobacco-related health inequities. The conditions where we learn, live, work, and play shape our well-being. They, in turn, are determined by the distribution of wealth, power, and resources. Health inequities, avoidable differences in health status between groups of people, persist when that distribution is unfair. Reducing the number of stores that sell tobacco and limiting how close that they can be to schools and other places that kids are frequently visiting are good ways to decrease tobacco use, curb exposure to tobacco marketing, and promote health equity. The location, density, and type of tobacco retailers in a community affect tobacco use rates and contribute to health inequities. Early research suggests higher hospitalization rates for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, for which smoking is a primary risk factor, in areas with more tobacco outlets. More recent evidence shows that higher tobacco store density is associated with a shorter life expectancy and more deaths. Federal law prohibits retailers from selling tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, to people under the age of 21. Sale of tobacco products to those under the age of 21 years old are subject to federal FDA enforcement. Retailer density and proximity are important in helping understand the negative environmental and community impact of tobacco retailers. In this slide, this basically just shows us if a recent quitter lives within 250 meters, which is about the size of 3 football fields, of a tobacco retailer, his or her odds of trying to stay quit over 6 months are cut in half compared to someone that does not live within that 250 meters of a retailer. Research also shows that e-cigarettes are significantly easier for underage youth to purchase than cigarettes. Underage purchases attempts of vaping products are 35% less likely to trigger an ID request and 42% more likely to result in a sales violation compared to purchase attempts for regular cigarettes.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the Pride survey. So this was a survey done during the 21-22 academic school year, and this survey was given to 8th, 9th, and 12th graders in Carteret County schools. And they work with the Coastal Coalition of Substance Use Prevention, known as CSAP, and CSAP provides the survey. So CSAP consists of 5 counties, so Craven, Pamlico, Jones, Onslow, and ourselves. So you can kind of see here, this shows the annual use of substance use, so tobacco, e-cigarettes, alcohol, and any illicit drugs. So you can kind of see that there was increases in both e-cigarettes, alcohol, and any illicit drugs in 12th graders as compared to 8th and 10th graders, but you can still see that there was an increase in any use of these substances. Okay, furthermore, so this is just some of the things that students responded yes to using specific drugs in the past 30 days. So the purple indicates grades 6 through 8, and the teal color represents 9th through 12th. So you can kind of see here that e-cigarettes, alcohol, and marijuana were higher increases as compared to all the other illicit drugs that these students were using in the past 30 days. And then lastly, this is just also a indicator of both tobacco, e-cigarette, alcohol, and any illicit drug use in the past 30 days as well. It's just showing increases as well. And then this is just showing the average age of onset with the use of e-cigarettes. So 8th grade, 10th, and 12th grade, as you can see, as they get older and as they are getting into each grade level, that increased use of e-cigarettes will be increasing throughout high school.
All right, so just to kind of talk a little bit more about the e-cigarette, the devices themselves. E-cigarettes are devices that heat up a liquid and then it turns into an aerosol that which the user inhales. Some e-cigarettes, they look like regular tobacco products, such as your typical regular cigarette. But in more recent years, we've seen how e-cigarettes that look like other things come along, much like USB flash drives, writing pens, and other everyday items. Juul is one of the most commonly known e-cigarettes that that has taken the shape of a USB flash drive. But no matter what you call it, whether we call it vapes or e-cigarettes, they're all the same thing, and basically, none of them are safe. They all contain tobacco. 99% of them do, and they are not safe for young people to use. So to continue about the devices, e-cigarette, they are the most popular tobacco product among youth. Internal tobacco industry documents do show that tobacco companies have a long history of using flavors to reduce the harshness of their products to make them more appealing to new users. amongst all of whom are under the age of 18. And then this slide just basically, it kind of just shows you some different types of devices that are very popular right now within the youth. Whether it's a refillable tank that you refill the pod with, or the disposables. This slide just kind of just gives you different an idea of all the different types of options. And as you can see, they come in very many colors that probably appeal more to our youth than it would to older adults. So just a couple other things about the flavor in the nicotine product. Once again, there is no safe form of tobacco use. All forms do contain nicotine and cause addiction and health problems. With or without smoke, nicotine is dangerous for youth and adults. Nicotine pouches are one of the latest products that tobacco industry is using to attract new users and keep people, especially our youth, addicted to tobacco products. Many companies have advertised the products as nicotine products that can be used by smokers in place where smoking is not allowed. For example, on an airplane or even at school or any type of school function, like in the bathroom or at a game. Although the tobacco industry markets emerging nicotine products as clean and reduced harm, the long-term health effects of nicotine pouches, the use of them, are unknown.
So now we're going to talk about the vape liquid known as e-juice. And as you can kind of see here, there are just what they call imposters. So you should never drink the e-juice or allow anyone to drink it because the liquid nicotine can be poisonous. Some vape liquids are similar to food items, as you can kind of see here. These are some of those examples. The Food and Drug Advertisement Administration issued a warning to companies that misleading labeled or advertised nicotine containing e-liquid as kid-friendly food products such as juice, boxes, candies, as well as cookies. According to the FDA, e-liquids are dangerous for children and may cause death, seizure, and coma. The products are particularly concerning because they appear to imitate fruit products and or feature graphic image that imitate cartoon characters that are commonly marketed to children, making it more appealing and making them more likely to get addicted to their product. So just to reiterate, they're just very poisonous to both children as well as pets. So vaping can have many side effects when the e-liquid does not contain nicotine. So we know that 99% of e-cigarettes will contain nicotine. They have that 1% that does not contain nicotine. However, they are not considered safe. Despite being food-grade ingredients, the flavoring and additives in e-liquid can have numerous harmful effects on the body when a person heats or vaporizes them. So as you can kind of see here, these are just some examples of vaping towards our impacts of our health. So you can kind of see here we have many things such as it's a trend. So as they're coming up in the market, more people are going to be more likely to use it because they're seeing more people do it. It's very addictive, underage addiction, poisonous. So they create that profit. So the more people that are buying, the more money they're going to be making. So that's just some things to consider. So more addiction than a cigarette. So an e-cigarette has that high level of nicotine, which is designed to hit the bloodstream and the brain more quickly. So it can be used discreetly and continuously. As we mentioned earlier, it can be disguised as that flash drive, school supplies, you name it. They're going to be likely to just use it. Nicotine is, the average nicotine in one device is 1 to 2 packs of cigarettes, so this contains up to 20 packs of cigarettes. So an e-cigarette makes aerosol, but that is not a vapor. And basically an e-cigarette aerosol that users breathe from the device and exhale can contain harmful chemicals and potential harmful substances. So besides nicotine, e-cigarettes are that aerosol, and they can contain cancer-causing chemicals, heavy metals, and particles that can be inhaled deeply into the lungs and harm your body. And even though e-cigarette aerosol generally contains fewer harmful chemicals than a regular cigarette, safer does not mean safe. This applies to both people using e-cigarettes as well as cigarettes, and people may be exposed to secondhand aerosol from other people using an e-cigarette. And by the way, those flavoring in the e-cigarettes aren't necessarily safe either. Your gut can handle a lot more than your lungs, and flavoring in e-liquid or pods may not be safe when inhaled. So that aerosol can cause those short-term issues such as breathing, or issues with your breathing, your lungs, your nose, as well as also linked to heart disease, as well as your mouth, issues with your mouth. So when we think about nicotine, nicotine is that highly addictive drug in tobacco products. It can be found in any tobacco products such as your cigars, your smokeless tobacco, or nearly all e-cigarettes will contain that nicotine. These are not FDA-approved quit smoking nicotine replacement medications. Rather, they are advertised as tobacco-free, and they are claimed to be made with synthetic nicotine. They are marked to the youth and available with fruit and dessert flavors, implying minimum harm. So what can nicotine do? So nicotine can specifically make changes in our brain that makes it more vulnerable to chronic use of illicit drugs. So right now, important growth is happening in each of your brains and will continue happening until about the age of 25. The brain is the last organ in the human body to develop fully. Exposing your brain to nicotine while it's in this important developmental phase can cause addiction and harm your brain. So why is this? So when we think about this, each time a new memory is created or a new skill is learned, stronger connections or synapses are built between the brain cells. Nicotine changes the ways these connections and or synapses are formed, which can harm the parts of the brain that control both attention and learning. Although adults may use nicotine products to quit, for youth, any exposure to nicotine is considered unsafe. So a lot of people don't realize that your oral health impacts your overall health. Like when we think about it, it starts in your mouth. So if you're not taking care of your mouth, then that's later on going to cause complications to your overall well-being. So as you can kind of see here, using e-cigarettes may increase the risk of getting both cavities as well as tooth disease. And it can also, vaping products may also significantly impair the functioning of the body's blood vessels, which increases the risk of cardiovascular disease as well. So that's just some considerations to take into. So just to reiterate, how does nicotine in e-cigarettes impact the brain? So we know the brain stops developing at the age of 25. Youth who use nicotine can harm the parts of the brain that control both attention, learning, mood, as well as impulse control. So those are just some things that nicotine can impact the brain. So nicotine can lead to addiction. Because nicotine is a form of learning, young people can get addicted more easily than adults. The nicotine in e-cigarettes and other tobacco products can also prime your brain for addiction to other substances. We call this the gateway drug. Does everyone who uses nicotine products go on to harder substances? Absolutely not. But there is research linking nicotine to alcohol misuse, heroin, as well as cocaine use. So now we're going to just talk about some behavioral risks associated with nicotine and e-cigarettes. Another risk in using e-cigarettes is that youth who use these e-cigarettes are more likely to go on to smoking cigarettes later on, even if they think they never will. So the use of 2 or more tobacco products is common among middle and high school youth. Many young people who use that e-cigarette will also smoke cigarettes. So the best thing to do to protect your health is to not use any tobacco products at all. No matter how it's delivered, that e-cigarette or that cigarette, nicotine is harmful to your health. So as you can kind of see here, e-cigarettes are very dangerous. They can cause some poisoning. And if it isn't scary enough, even worse, children and adults have been poisoned by swallowing, breathing and absorbing that e-cigarette liquid through either their skin or their eyes. So as you can kind of see, in 2020 or 2011, there was 271 poisoning calls. But as you can kind of see here, 3 years later, there's more than over 39 or 3,957 calls. So as you can kind of see here, these are very dangerous. And if you see that e-liquid or that e-cigarette, make sure that you're not picking that up and get some help. And make sure you're disposing it properly as a biohazard chemical. And as you can kind of see, these are just some real life examples of individuals with that e-cigarette battery that cause fires and explosions. And if potential poisoning wasn't enough, defective e-cigarette batteries have caused fires and explosions, some of which have resulted in serious injuries. Most explosives happen when the e-cigarette batteries were being charged. So those are just some of those examples. And then the big takeaway is e-cigarettes use poses a significant and avoidable health risk to your children and you. So, thank you.
So I have some questions for you. If you guys can't answer, maybe Teresa can answer it. So if you find out that your child is vaping and they've already developed an addiction, and as we know, kids are vulnerable because their adolescent brains are still developing, what would be your recommendation to help them quit? So you just say they're 14, you found out they've been smoking since, they were 12 or something, what would we do?
So, we actually give out Quitline resources, and it's Quitline NC. So for kids that age, there is actually a number that you could just text. It's confidential, and it's all free. So that person on the other line at the Quitline Center would just be there as a resource, and also they would send nicotine pouches. They send nicotine gum, just to kind of help them through. And then it's just a completely interactive line. So they help the kids set dates and reach goals of when they would like to quit, and they just really kind of walk them through and hold their hands.
So what are some signs to look for if you think your child might be vaping? They're good at hiding this stuff. So what would be?
So the first one would be a dry cough. You're going to definitely notice a lot more coughing within a child or young or teen, whatever the age is. Also, some other ones would be
so like nausea, vomiting, or if they have asthma, that's gonna make it worse.
What about reduced appetite? Is that?
I'm sure definitely you could see that in there too. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you guys know of any current legislation that might regulate or penalize companies that are targeting our youth? You showed some examples, but I've seen things like hoodies. They have the drawstrings that you vape from. I've seen Apple phone covers, watches that you vape from, keychains. I mean, asthma. It looks like an asthma inhaler, but it's a vape. Is there any kind of legislation penalizing those companies, or are you just making money off our youth?
To be honest, I'm not 100% sure.
It's like Joe Camel, the cigarette company. They got in some little trouble there. So
yes.
Figuring that this might be a route that might.
Yes. Teresa, would you be able to?
So Juul was the first company that was sued. So North Carolina sued Juul in 2019. And Juul will be paying $40 million out over 6 years to, in fact, fund cessation programs within our communities in North Carolina. So that's specific to North Carolina. North Carolina, I think, was one of 9 states that sued Juul. Some local communities did as well. There's also other legislation that can help. For example, Tobacco 21. You heard in the presentation that federal law, you can't purchase products under the age of 21. I mean, yeah, under the age of 21. But what's North Carolina state law? Anyone know? 18. So in North Carolina, you can go to a vape shop or a gas station or any of these places and buy a product. We have not caught up. So that is another piece of legislation that is really going to help is for North Carolina to develop a strong tobacco 21 law. Because in turn, what that does is it creates a gap between high school students and the older community. So we are, North Carolina's behind on that. We're working on it, but we are behind. There's a House bill right now, House Bill 900 or something like that. And that was something that it was just snuck in real quick was a tobacco registry. And I don't know if you've heard of it, but they snuck in for there to be a tobacco registry into this bill to have tobacco products registered. But the problem is there are so many products. Like Oklahoma has a tobacco registry, and I think the registry is like 190 pages long. So for anyone to be able to, the purpose of a registry is to be able to go to a store and make sure what they are selling is allowable. All that 190-page registry isn't going to help our enforcement go to it more. And so I think, our best bet would be looking at a strong tobacco 21 law.
I got one more question.
Yeah.
On a state and federal level, what are the age restrictions for purchasing hemp, CBD, and Delta 8 in North Carolina? Is that 18, or is there a federal, is it regulated, or is there age restrictions?
So there is no restriction for Delta products, federally or state. No restriction for Delta 8, 9, 10, any of those Delta products. So I can give you the history on all of that. It's a lot, but right now there is zero. You can go into, anybody can go into a store and buy a Delta product. Now, I'm not telling you a store is going to sell it, but there is not a law that says that they cannot purchase. Oftentimes stores are not really sharing that because they want it to be kind of still under the carpet that people think that you have to be 18 or 21. But Delta products, there's no age restriction.
Okay.
How much does it cost? I mean, this is revelation for me. I thought all there were cigarettes, I didn't know that they had so many other things. And where do they get the money from the fire? Their money shouldn't give them so much allowances. They can work for it.
I think also a lot of issues with that come from older siblings and friends of older siblings. I think that plays a huge role in it. Ultimately, kids, whenever they want something, they're going to find a lot of ways to go and get that, especially the more curious ones. So I think that has a huge part in it. Also for like parents who use e-cigarettes, sometimes, they might have a couple laying around and the kid might, be aware of, well, hey, mom and dad are using this one. They haven't touched that one in a while. So maybe they go and grab that one. So I think that plays a big role in it too. Because, a sixth grader, 10-year-old or whatever, they're not going to necessarily just walk into one of the tobacco or vape shops. But, for someone around that age range, that's a different way for them to navigate through and grab it.
When I was little, they had little artificial cigarettes, so you bought them for the nickel or something like that. But, there's no enticement for whatever I see up here, other than how it must make them feel or something. Is it a drug?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and a lot of it is like the appeal of it. So a lot of it has cartoon characters on it. The packaging, it's pretty colors, and then again with the flavors. The Krispy Kreme, the Twinkie flavors are so appealing to kids. So that's kind of what it is too. They wanna taste it. They're curious. So kind of sums that.
Any questions? Any questions?
Question.
No?
Well, thank you for your presentation. A lot of information.
Thank you.
Used to be you couldn't watch an old TV show without seeing Lucy and Desi firing up the old cigarette. All right, next up is the ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance to clarify the table of permitted and special uses in the B20 and B30 zoning districts. The next three, just let everybody know, we got 3 public hearing coming up on the next 3 issues.
Thank you, Mayor Baker, commissioners. So the ordinance amendment presented for your consideration tonight, the first one would essentially clarify the table of permitted and special uses, primarily in the B30 zoning district, but also some slight adjustments and clarifications in the B20 zoning district. This ordinance amendment is presented for your consideration as a result of the recent community discussion about tobacco and vape shops. The ordinance that's proposed for your consideration tonight would allow tobacco and vape shops. However, they would only be allowed in the B30 zoning district and would only be allowed with a special use permit. And so that approach is one that's designed to limit these and make sure that they are located in locations that are compatible with existing residential and commercial development in the community. And the strategy here is to really take several uses that were identified in the CAMA land use plan and also in recent community conversations, identify those uses that the town would generally like to discourage and steer towards specific areas of the town where there would not be as detrimental of an impact on existing residential and commercial development. And so what this ordinance does is it takes a total of 25 different land uses, and I won't go through the entire list with you, but the list is in the packet. Everything from addiction rehab centers to body piercing parlors to equipment repair, heavy manufacturing, laundromat, sexually oriented businesses, tattoo shops, and tobacco and vape shops. And there's a total of 25 uses spelled out here. They're not currently listed in the table of permitted and special uses. If the board adopts this UDO amendment tonight, they would be listed in the table of permitted and special uses. Every single one of those 25 would be listed as special use permit in the B30 zoning district. So currently we have one parcel zoned B30. It's the site of the Culligan water facility out on Highway 24 on the eastern part of town. There is certainly the possibility that a property owner could request rezoning of an existing B20 or even a residential, really any parcel in the town to B30. And so that's something that if a parcel is zoned B30 in the future, these 25 uses that I just described would be allowed in that zoning district on that property with a special use permit. Also included some information in the written memo in your packet about the special use permit process. Just a real quick review of that. That is a separate quasi-judicial process that is ultimately determined by the Board of Commissioners. And essentially, if something is listed as permitted in a zone with a special use permit, if the applicant can essentially prove to you that the impacts of that use are manageable and can be mitigated, then the Board of Commissioners has the right to either allow that use in that zone or can also deny that use in that zone and can also put additional conditions and so forth on it. So again, what's proposed here is all of these 25 uses would be allowed in B30 and they would only be allowed with a special use permit. So if, for example, an individual wanted to come and wanted to put a laundromat at the Culligan facility, for example, that's one of the new uses listed here. That would be permitted on that site, but if that applicant went through the process and ultimately the Board of Commissioners did not issue a special use permit, would not be permitted at that particular site. Similarly, if say a property that's zoned B20, say on Highway 24, closer to Taylor and Ocean Road, if they wanted to put in a laundromat, for example, they could request a rezoning from B20 to B30. And that would go through the typical legislative process with our planning board and ultimately with our board of commissioners. And ultimately, the board of commissioners may say, you know what, we think it's appropriate to rezone this property from B20 to B30 and allow all of the uses here. Beyond that, if you took that step, the applicant would still need to go through a special use permit process, and the Board of Commissioners would make the final decision on that. So this ordinance amendment is designed to specifically identify and list those uses that may be more impactful on the community and really put them in just certain places under very certain limited circumstances. So that's the gist of the ordinance amendment. It was reviewed by the planning board at their meeting on July 23rd. They made some adjustments to it. Some of these 25 uses, initially we started out with them being permitted in the B30 zone. The planning board felt like there needed to be that additional level of review through the special use permit process. So their recommendation was to put all 25 of them in the B30 zone with a special use permit. There's one other change that is relatively minor in the grand scheme of the issues we've been talking about, but I want to make sure that you're aware of it. As part of this ordinance amendment, if the board adopts it, it clarifies food trucks. It also clarifies golf cart sales and service facilities. So we don't currently list golf cart sales and service facilities in our UDO. This simply would add that as a permitted use in the B20 zoning district and also in the B30 district. The other change is food trucks. So we currently allow food trucks in any zoning district in the town, any commercial zoning district in the town. There's been some confusion about that in the past. The ordinance amendment tonight, if the board approves it, would not allow food trucks to just drive around and set up, for example, at the Lowe's food store or maybe at the lighting shop down Highway 24. But it would allow food trucks as part of a special event, things like the Fall Festival. If Mac Daddy's, for example, is having like a customer appreciation event outside and wants to bring in some food trucks, special events, whether they're publicly or privately organized, food trucks would be allowed to operate there under this ordinance amendment, but they couldn't just drive around and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to set up at Starbucks. Starbucks gave me permission, which that's currently allowed in our ordinance. So that was something that came from my individual discussions with the board, and that's been incorporated in here. That was included in the recommendation by the Board of Commissioners. So that's it in a nutshell. I did want to say that for some of the particularly more impactful uses, there is a list of 8 of those. Addiction rehab centers, adult entertainment, cannabis dispensaries, hemp-derived psychoactive product dispensaries, homeless shelters, sexually oriented businesses, smoke, vape, drug accessories and paraphernalia, and tobacco and vape shops. There's another standard in there that says they basically have to be located 1,500 feet or more away from another identical use in that category, or from things like a church or a school or a park, really the kinds of places where you might have children or you might have religious values that might be especially conflicting with these particular uses. So I forgot to mention that initially. You've really got kind of, I think, 3 different checks on these 25 uses or some of the 25 uses. Number 1, you've got them limited to the B30 zoning district. Number 2, they all need a special use permit, which requires another level of review. And then number 3, for these 8 uses, they have to be 1,500 feet from other similar uses or things like parks, libraries, schools, et cetera. So not all of the 25 uses were identified in the CAMA land use plan, but probably about 2/3 of them were. The other third of them came about just from various conversations over the last couple of months, and they've all been included in this list of 25 uses. So with that, Mr. Mayor, if you want to, I'm happy to answer any questions from the board. If you want to open the public hearing.
I'm going to say, if the board agrees, we'll do the public hearing on these first, and then we can open the first discussion questions. You guys okay with that? Just a consensus? Okay, well then I'll entertain a motion to go into the public hearing now from the regular meeting.
Make a motion to go into public hearing.
Okay, second. All right, all in favor? All right, we are now in public hearing. We did not have anybody signed up to speak Is there anybody here that would like to speak? All righty, I entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
Make that motion.
All right, second. All in favor? Thank you, gentlemen. All right, we're back in. Any questions for Frank?
I got a question.
All right.
On page 3, I guess you got a bullet points, go down to the 8th one where it says the proposed use shall not be obnoxious or offensive by reason of vibration, noise, odor, dust, smoke, or gas. Can we add lighting in that, like lights?
I think we certainly could, but basically what's listed here in the memorandum is existing language in your ordinance that applies to all special use permits. We certainly can consider amending the types of criteria to consider in special use permits. Might need to give that a little more thought than just making an adjustment on the fly tonight. I'm happy to do that if you would like to. And I'll know, Mr. Attorney, if you want to comment on that at all.
Is this the time to say something about the shall and the may? Is this,
You certainly can.
so like there's a determination cannot be made. Part of it is town manager may make a determination. I was thinking it should be shall, but you're the attorney, so I was going to refer back to you in that last paragraph.
Right, when it's not specifically listed.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the issue that we're trying to resolve, and I think that paragraph does need to be tweaked so we don't have uncertainty into the future.
Right.
But the default is going to be that the free use of property. So we do really need to try and find a way to put things that are unlisted into a specific category. And Frank and I actually had a call about 4:30 concerning that issue. So that's something we intend to bring back before the board to hopefully avoid any sort of misunderstanding in the future and not have to go through the whole Board of Adjustment hearing. Just be clear for the citizens as to what's allowed and what's not allowed. So we'll bring that back before the board for consideration.
Frank, in regard to the quasi judicial proceedings, just for knowledge for the board, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I remember where the applicant must meet all 8 of these standards. Is that correct? To get the special use permit?
There's usually, I think there's 4 standards by law. It's normally, it's not going to affect your neighbor's property, right? So that's.
I'm counting 8 requirements here. Am I reading it right or wrong?
What page are you on, sir?
Page 3.
Within the UDO, right? So yes, you have to check all those boxes, right?
So if they don't meet just one, they don't get the special use.
That's right.
That's just for knowledge for the board.
That's right.
I've been through the proceeding, but I just wanted to clarify that. Also, are these 8 requirements pretty standard for basically every municipality, or can you add to those?
No, you can certainly modify some because some is like, I know a couple of jurisdictions only have 4 standards where it's not as detailed as this. So that's something that the board will have some leeway on.
Okay. Frank, do you feel like these 8 standards fit our town?
I do, yeah. As Brett mentioned, I mean, this is more than many communities would include. And so I feel like this is sufficient. I think we certainly can talk about the lighting and certainly the may and the shall, which is different than this. But I feel pretty good about
Well,
this.
so
personally.
this is like what you might call a living document or whatever. We can amend it anytime we want to.
Absolutely.
So tonight, if we agree with this amendment, we can come back and amend it again for the lighting or whatnot. So, okay, correct. All right.
Yeah, and what I would propose is that we can look at the lighting issue and making that one of the criteria. We can look at the may and the shall, and I'd like to bring that back to you separate from this tonight, unless this is extremely important to you this evening.
So, of course, you would probably put the issue before the planning board before it came to us as far as the lighting, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, one thing just I failed to mention during my comments that I just want to make clear. I know that all of you know this, but for those in the audience, if the board adopts this ordinance tonight, it has no bearing on the case that was just brought before the Board of Adjustment. That proposal is subject to the ordinance that was in place at the time that application was made. So the intent behind this ordinance is to address any future applications that may be submitted for any of these uses listed here.
I've just got one more comment I want to throw out there. It would have been nice had we had a planning board member to come before the board as you would normally do to
tell us how they, you know.
Sure. It was ultimately a unanimous vote of the planning board to recommend approval to the board. And I will tell you, they had considerable discussion about the whole idea of making them all special use permits. They also recognize too that, as you mentioned, it's a living document and we can certainly tweak and improve it in the future. So you may see some of that as well.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments for Frank? Okay, we would like to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt the ordinance, amend the Unified Development Ordinance to clarify the table of permitted and special uses in the B20 and B30 zoning districts.
All right, have a
I'll
second?
second that motion.
All right. All in favor? All right, thank you. And next is the ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance to establish foundation survey requirements for new construction.
So this ordinance amendment was also reviewed by the planning board at their July meeting. It was also recommended unanimously for adoption by the Board of Commissioners. It's actually a pretty simple, straightforward ordinance amendment. We currently require the builder, the applicant, the owner to submit a foundation survey after the foundation is poured or erected if that property is located in a flood zone. And that's a requirement of the National Flood Insurance Program that's been in our ordinance for quite some time. The ordinance amendment for your consideration tonight would essentially require a foundation survey to be submitted for any new construction or significant expansion in the town going forward in any part of the town, whether it's in a flood zone or not in a flood zone. This requirement is not currently required other than the flood zones. It is, however, in my experience, a pretty common requirement in many communities, and quite frankly, I think it's just good practice. It essentially enables the builder, the owner, the town staff, the enforcement personnel to determine if the home is going to meet the setback requirements when the foundation goes in, as opposed to getting the foundation in and then someone starts building up and spends a lot of money and it's a lot more difficult to correct. So all this ordinance says is that we want you to submit the foundation survey after that foundation is poured or erected. I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't think it's terribly burdensome. And I think it would be a nice improvement for the UDO. So, and there's a public hearing required for this as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so we'll do like the previous and go ahead and entertain a motion to go into the public hearing.
So moved.
All right, second. Second. All in favor? All right, we're now in the public hearing, and we had no one sign up to speak on this as well. Anybody out there have any comments? Yes, Dottie, we'll let you speak. Yes, ma'am.
Well, the people next door, when their house was built, they put the foundation in too far away from our property, and they had to cut off and make it a one-car garage and take the bathroom out of the upstairs to enable the price better. So really, having a foundation inspection is very important.
Okay. All right, no other comments, so I'll entertain a motion to go out of the public hearing back in regular session.
So moved.
Second. All right, all in favor? Thank you. All right, we're now back in regular session. Questions for Frank?
Frank, in the permitting process, currently the town only issues zoning permit, correct?
Correct.
Where does this foundation, do the town get the foundation survey from the builder? Or is there any fees for that, or explain the process, somebody wants to.
Sure. Yeah, so we do require the foundation survey if the property is in a flood zone. And sometimes we have to go track down the builder or the owner of the property to get that, but that is required. People are generally submitting that. We don't currently require it for anyone else. So it would be incumbent, we're gonna have to communicate it obviously to the builder, to the owner of the property. And then we're going to have to make sure that they submit that and check that. And it would be a very quick turnaround time, basically just looking at the survey to make sure they've met the appropriate setbacks and so forth. So, but we don't currently require it.
Does the county require foundation survey in outlying areas?
Honestly, I do not know the county's procedure.
It is required in a couple areas. It's definitely required on the beach, if I remember correctly.
Do you, John, you being a builder, do you see any burden placed on the builder?
No,
Okay.
It's a fairly common requirement. So.
it's fairly common.
I have one question. Do we have any finished floor elevation requirements in our UDO? Do we, if it's, let's just say that it were in a floodplain, do we have any restrictions on the finished floor elevation? Like if you were to look at that survey?
Yeah, so that's covered under the flood ordinance. And so we require documentation that the lowest habitable floor is at least 2 feet above the base flood elevation. That's called the freeboard. So if, for example, if you're in a flood zone that's an AE9, for example, the elevation of the lowest finished floor is 11. And then you can do limited things below that, but you have to keep all of the habitable space above that 11 number. And so as part of the inspection process, we require elevation certificates from surveyors. That information is readily submitted. And that's important because that maintains our eligibility for flood insurance for everybody in this community. So we would not require that if the property is not in a flood zone. So that's not part of this ordinance amendment. So.
What is the estimated cost to every homeowner in the town to have an additional survey done?
Yeah, and certainly Commissioner Ritchie can comment on this. I would put it in the magnitude of a few $100s, most likely. Yeah. And one thing I want to make clear to the board also is that the intent is for this to apply to a new single-family home. Also, if there's a significant addition placed on a new single-family home, I don't intend to apply this if someone's bringing in a shed that they bought at Lowe's and they're setting it on the property. So, we don't want to burden anybody with this, but it is just common best practice to require this.
We see a increase in the amount of time it's going to take for people to move through their construction process due to this additional requirement. I don't know about y'all, but the last time I got a surveyor, he was a long time out. So this going to...
Yeah, so I think certainly when surveyors are very busy, there's a potential impact there. I mean, particularly here lately over the last couple of years, they've been incredibly busy. Hopefully that's slowing down a little bit. In terms of the town's review, I mean, it's something that we're going to turn around very quickly. I'd be shocked if it took more than a day. And that would only be probably because someone's out sick or on vacation or whatever the case may be. But the surveyors, I mean, it can be tough. So I would grant you that.
The last thing we want to do is make things more difficult, but I understand where you're going, what we need here.
Yeah, I want it to be the smoothest, easiest, fastest process for our customers. That's number one priority for us. Make sure they comply with what we require, but to do it in a helpful, cooperative way, get them what they're trying to achieve.
And once again, if this passes, then you need to do a public, put it on your
sure.
Website or whatnot and inform the public what's going on. Every one of these amendments that we do, the public needs to be aware of.
Absolutely.
Any more questions for Frank?
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor? All opposed? Okay. Motion carries 4-1.
All right.
Let's do it again. All right. Next up is a ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance to require impervious area calculations on site plans.
Similarly, this is really more of a procedural amendment to the UDO. I included a copy of our stormwater management requirements in your packet. Just for a quick recap, if it is a commercial project, if it is a new residential subdivision, if it is a multifamily residential development, Our ordinance requires that an engineered stormwater plan be prepared. It's either going to accommodate the 1-year 24-inch rainfall event, roughly 3.67 inches, give or take, or it's going to accommodate a 1.5-inch rainfall event. And in almost all cases, probably not quite all, but almost all, it's going to be a state stormwater permit. And what our ordinance says is that we will accept the state stormwater permit, but we want a minimum of 2-inch rainfall event for that. In many cases, it's going to be more than that. What we say about single family residential development, just somebody building a house on a vacant lot, is if you have less than 30% impervious coverage, you essentially just have to meet certain driveway requirements. You essentially have to tilt the driveway back from the street, make sure that it's not shooting the water out into the street right away, and pretty common sense type requirements. What our ordinance does say is that if you exceed 30% impervious coverage for the construction of a new single family home, or if you have an existing home and you're putting an expansion on, or maybe you're building a more significant driveway or creating more impervious coverage, if you exceed that 30% threshold, you have to have a stormwater management plan prepared. In this case, it doesn't have to be prepared by an engineer. It could be prepared by the building contractor, the landscape contractor, it could be just the property owner. It's really actually pretty simple math to do it. But if you exceed that 30% threshold, you have to infiltrate the rainfall from the first 1.5 inch rainfall event on the site, essentially. And most people may do that with just a low depression in the yard. They may do it with some sort of underground French drain type system. They may funnel it into a wetland or a pond or things like that. So it's not a particularly burdensome or complicated process, but it just goes a little bit further. And when the planning board and the board of commissioners reviewed this, they wanted to address potential stormwater issues with people who have a lot of impervious coverage. Now, the reality is most people don't get anywhere near 30% impervious coverage, particularly in Cape Carteret, where you have relatively large lots. Many of our lots are 20,000 square feet. It takes a lot of impervious coverage to get to 30%. And so what this requirement that's presented for your consideration tonight doesn't change any of that. All of that stuff has been in place for the last couple of years or so. Some of it's been in place longer than that in Cape Carteret. All this ordinance amendment does is simply require the impervious area calculation on the survey that's submitted when someone builds a single family home or does a significant addition or expansion. Again, all the big stuff, commercial projects, subdivisions, et cetera, they're engineered stormwater plans. They're going to have all that stuff anyway. For the single family homes, it's really a very simple calculation for a surveyor. They have to have a surveyor anyway. The surveyor is just simply going to calculate the impervious area calculation to document for us that they're not going over the 30%. I think it would be rare that someone goes over the 30%. So in other cases, if it's an expansion and it's really not even close, I think we would accept, like if someone, for example, is putting in a shed, or maybe they're just expanding their driveway and maybe they're building another parking space for their kid or something like that, we would rely on impervious calculations from online mapping from the GIS system. However, we could ultimately require the surveyor to do that. It is probably a 2-minute exercise for the surveyor to calculate. And the intent with this ordinance amendment is simply to require that be on the application for a single family home. Similarly, planning board discussed this at their meeting in July. They did recommend approval unanimously. We have scheduled a public hearing on this tonight as well, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I got a couple. Page 2, in your example, you have house/roof 4,000 square feet. Are you talking about the imprint of the house or the roof for the 4,000 square feet? Because a 4,000 square foot home will not have a 4,000 square foot roof.
Yeah, that's right. So it's just the impervious coverage. So if it's got 3 stories and each floor is 2,000 square feet, it's just 2,000. Yeah, correct.
But the roof may be 6,000 feet or 5,000 feet.
Well, if generally, I mean, if it's multi-story, it's the impervious coverage. So if the roof, I guess, is 6,000 and the house is only 2,000, then it'll be 6,000. But it's the area that's covered over the ground that's not pervious.
Well, I know over. I'm sorry, Chuck.
Do you calculate that based on the actual square footage of the roof or the equivalent planar surface that the roof would cover if it was flat?
If it was flat, a horizontal slice, so to speak.
All right, let's go into the public session, then we'll have some more questions. We'll address those. All right, so a motion to go into the public hearing. Okay, second.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? All right, we're now in public hearing. Do we have anybody? Okay, so nobody signed up to speak. Anybody have a comment? If not, I'll entertain a motion to come out of the public hearing and back in regular session.
I'll make that motion.
Second. All in favor? Okay, and John, please continue.
Under number 6, impervious surfaces, I'd like to see D and E amended.
I'm sorry, John.
Sorry, John, what'd you say?
What page you on?
On number 6, it's not got a page number, but it's probably the
What
third
section?
page after the announcement.
So you're looking at the existing stormwater ordinance? Yeah, so just to clarify, that's not part of the amendment tonight. That's for your information. That's our entire stormwater management ordinance, but please
All right,
continue.
well, you've got paver blocks.
Yes.
And you have impervious paver blocks would allow people, or pervious paver blocks that allow people to expand their impervious if they need to.
Sure.
I'd like to see that included. Got pervious concrete that's not listed. Compacted gravel by the state under Diener several years ago was considered, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, is now considered pervious. Is that correct? Number 57 stone, and I'd like to see that added. And we can, if it's going to be a living document, address those things to the planning board at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Commissioner Ritchie, it may be good to just reference the state standards, right? Because
Well,
I think the certain materials that the state
well, 50,
recognizes as being pervious, that we could probably, that way we don't have to change it each time
Okay.
and come up with a new material.
I'll get it for you.
Yeah, or we can figure that out.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we certainly can bring that back to the planning board and have that discussion and bring something back to you.
All right. Other than that, I'm good.
Any more questions for Frank?
Yeah, Frank, I've got one.
Okay.
What are we gaining here?
Yeah, I mean, it simply makes it easier for us to judge the permit application. Like I said, we already have the requirement that if you exceed 30%. And so to this point, it's really just been a matter of loosely reviewing aerial photography. All this does is require the surveyor to put that on the survey that they submit to the town. So it just provides that certainty there. Instead of guesstimating, you're relying on actual data. It's really more of, I would characterize it as just a procedural improvement to the UDO.
To me, containing the 1.5 inches on your lot helps our stormwater plan throughout the town. I mean, and I'm going to just say this, when I was standing with Ryan on the 3rd depression, where we're having stormwater problems. I hadn't stood there probably in 15 years because I don't play golf anymore, but when I looked across the golf course, I remember that those lots used to be higher and fully wooded. Now they're clear cut. And all that water is going into the golf course, and then it's coming over to us. And if they would retain some of the water on their property, it would help that situation. I put stormwater on every one of my homes I build, just to make sure that the water isn't flowing to Mother Nature and ruining our #1 asset. I'm a firm believer in stormwater retention. And it could be as simple as a 6-inch pipe, and 12 inches of gravel, 30 foot long. Maybe $1,500 to $1,800
Yeah.
for your gutters.
Yeah, and I think those are the kinds of solutions that we want to encourage people to use, and we don't want to burden them with the more expensive, more complicated solutions.
Not like the Dover on the beach.
So I don't have concern, I don't really have concern with what we're doing here, and I know it makes it easier for you to have numbers, but you and I have talked extensively about making sure that the UDO is simpler, not more complicated. So are you comfortable that this is not adding additional layers of complexity to a document we're trying to simplify?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's definitely an improvement. I will say that ultimately the comprehensive rewrite of the UDO has taken me far longer than I would like it to take. It's very difficult, to be honest with you, and complicated. And ultimately, what I decided is when we identify these kinds of little improvements that we can make along the way, I've decided to bring them forward to the planning board and ultimately to you all to try to tidy up some of this stuff. But when the document is completely rewritten, I absolutely want it to be a very simple, easy to understand document. Honestly, I want you to be able to read it like you read People magazine, if you read People magazine. That's simple, right? So I look at this as kind of an interim, let's clean this up along with some of these other smaller things that you're seeing, but still want to achieve the goal you mentioned.
Well, this UDO is a work in progress. Just like I mentioned earlier, it's a living document. We amend it every month if you want to, you know. So you got to start somewhere, Frank.
Yeah. Yeah, and believe me, there's no one who wants to bring you a comprehensive rewritten document than I do, because quite frankly, it is a very challenging, frustrating document, even as staff to administer. So it needs some work.
And I think you're headed in the right direction. It's a lot of work, a lot of headache.
Any more questions for Frank?
No, I would like to make a motion to adopt the ordinance amending the UDO to require impervious area calculations on site plans.
Okay. Second.
Second.
All in favor? All right, thank you. Next up is a review of the schematic design options for a potential new town hall police station.
Yeah, Mayor Baker, I want to introduce you to Russ Woods and Jonathan McDaniel. They were retained by the board a few months ago to develop some schematic design options for a potential new town hall police station. I'm going to put up the images here in a little bit and let Russ walk you through those. Russ is from the firm of Dunn and Dalton, based in Kinston. Been working with he and Jonathan over the last couple of months to get to this point with you. Jonathan McDaniel's here in the audience with Tidewater Associates, a local engineering and surveying firm. So Russ, thanks for being here. You got to talk into the mic. So let me hold this up for you, and you can take it away.
I like the look of the new place, Jonathan.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Less smoky than the last one.
He's a funny guy.
There's order option 1, 2, 3.
Just gonna keep pinning down. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Russ Woods. I'm with Dunn & Dalton Architects. We were contracted by the town to put together some schematic design options for a new town hall. And I want to go through those options with you tonight. So I might kind of skip by the exteriors, Frank, if that's all right, and maybe go to the floor plans first. Well, I'll start with the site plan. That's fine. Is there like a way I can make this smaller? No. Well, anyway. So option 1 We looked at the whole site, including the building fronting 24, which is down here, kind of underneath this yellow building, which is where the golf cart tenant and the Girl Scouts tenant space is right now. And then this kind of gray is the current building that we're in right now, current town hall. And then to the back of the site is the park area. And then this is the existing parking that ties across to the other street. So we looked at this being the location for the new building towards the front of the property. And then with the idea of working hard to get the square footage to fit to keep the existing building in service during construction. And then looking at options for either to demolish that building, this building that we're in right now, after that one is built, to make way for parking or to reuse it for some other purpose. So we've got a couple of different options for that. So option one is a one-story town hall building, about 7,700 square feet. And then a increase in the parking area behind the building, kind of in the place of the current town hall, and tying that parking into the existing parking to the west. The floor plan of the building is here. So you would walk in from the front, from a parking area on 24, into a main lobby, and then have access to town offices, kind of in this tan area, or police department offices, kind of in this brown area. And then just because of the narrowness of the site and some of the restrictions of the site, the boardroom goes kind of in the back of the building with an entry on the side. And if I can just kind of go back to the site plan. So here's where the lobby would be for access to the town offices and the police department offices. And then there'd be parking and an access to the boardroom on the side here. The boardroom would have the ability to have its own entry and toilets where you could lock off the rest of the building, so that public only has access kind of into that yellow portion. And then the front lobby would also include sort of a control point access where these could be secure doors, operated by a remote button that the receptionist would have to allow people and kind of control entry into those areas. We met with town staff and police staff to go over all their needs. The spaces in the building are allowable for future growth. They cover current needs plus additional space for future growth. So that's kind of option number one. And then the exterior of this one is a one-story building, kind of with a tall element at the main entry lobby area to kind of make a statement, on 24, something that you would see, as you're going up and down the road. And then this is just another view of it kind of from the corner of the intersection with Dolphin Street. 24 kind of out here, and then Dolphin going back that way. So that's option one. Option two, jumping ahead, is similar in that we're keeping the existing town hall, but demolishing it after construction is complete to make way for parking. And we're putting a new building in the front of the property with all of the different program elements in it. However, it's a two-story building, so it takes up a little bit less room on the property. The main entry into a lobby would be at the front, and this, in this case, would give you access to the town offices upstairs, the police department offices downstairs, and the boardroom, all kind of from one central lobby. The floor plan for this option would work like this. You'd come into the main lobby. You can either turn and go into the boardroom or in through a secure door to the police department. or have another secure door to access an elevator and stairs to the second floor, which is where the town offices would be. One feature I didn't mention on the first option, but it's something we've incorporated into all of them, is the idea of the boardroom being kind of a multi-use space, where it could be used for different events, community uses, and then have access to kind of an event lawn behind it with maybe, big glass garage doors that go up, or something where you could kind of have this in and out connection with the outdoors from that boardroom. So more of a multi-use kind of space. This option still has a separate entry for the boardroom for evening use when you want to keep the rest of the building locked off with access to toilets. Another piece of all of these options is the use of the boardroom as an EOC, Emergency Operations Center. And the kind of purplish spaces here would be kind of used by police department and boardroom in this case. So the boardroom would have access to a conference room, a break room, and toilets with showers, more kind of for when this might be used as an EOC, where they could have access to showers in the case of people staying here overnight. And also to break room for, some kind of eating facilities. So all the doors kind of connecting those spaces back to the police department would be lockable, so that you couldn't kind of move through that area back into the police offices. And then the exterior for this one would look something like that, where here's your kind of main entry under a porch. Your town offices are on the second floor. The boardroom EOC space is over here on its own kind of wing. And then this is the stair elevator core that would kind of become a tower feature that sits kind of on that corner of 24 and Dolphin. That's a pretty, prime corner, and would kind of have that visibility and give the town kind of a new public face to the community. One other idea here was, again, this is kind of option 2A, which was tearing down the old town hall after the new one is built. Option 2B is to keep the existing town hall building that we're in right now and repurpose it as a tenant building for possible revenue stream for the town. We can fit the parking kind of around it. You don't get quite as much parking, but you still do pretty well. I think it's only maybe 5 or 10 spaces different. I don't remember the exact numbers. But you still end up with a pretty good amount of additional parking. So that's one option. One option to go, or do you want to?
I just had a quick
Go ahead.
question on this one. I know you've got a vent lawn up against the building in this option. How much of the existing lawn goes away with that option?
Well,
I just couldn't tell where you're.
The park, if you're talking about the park area that's kind of back here, that's not really affected at all.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I guess one thing that would affect it, the event lawn is kind of down here nearer to the building. So we may put paving across some of that. Right now, the line is right there. That's the edge of your current paving. So here's the the current property line, before these are recombined. And then this is where we're showing new pavement going back to. So that's probably about 25, 30 feet.
Yeah, the intent with all the options is to keep Community Park essentially as it is right now, some minor impacts.
Yeah, and what we're actually thinking is that septic for this new building could be located in the park. So it needs to be kept green space. So option 3 is the last option, and I'll jump ahead to that. So option 3 was to look at what if we kept the current town hall building and repurposed it for use of some of the uses that are going in the new building. So what if the police department offices stay in that building and kind of expand into the rest of it? You know, right now they occupy maybe half, and they could get the entire facility. And then the new town hall would include the boardroom, EOC, and just the town offices. So that's kind of what this option talks about. And then there's kind of a indoor connector between the two there. So floor plan wise, similar to option 2, you come in to the lobby. Instead of this being a stair feature, since there's no second floor, it's kind of an entry porch tower feature. Come into the lobby, you have access into the town offices or access into the boardroom, EOC, and then those same shared spaces between the two. This one also has public toilets that would be accessible to the outside and near that event lawn space. And then this is the kind of connector across to the police department offices. So in this option, the event lawn kind of sits in that corner and the public toilets would be right in this area accessible to it. So that's floor plan, and then exteriors would be somewhat similar to the previous option, but a little bit pulled down in scale. These windows would kind of bring some light into the lobby area. So the lobby would be a high kind of space with a high ceiling, and then this would be a porch element, but it still have that sort of tower feature that makes that corner element that kind of new face for the town. And I didn't mention back on option 1, there is an event lawn kind of idea incorporated into that one that would basically be right where the existing building is now. So that space would have parking kind of all around it, but be a lawn space with that boardroom EOC being at the back of the building and having access to it. Any questions?
So there's only one that has space for tenants? One?
That's right.
2B is your option. Tenants.
But I mean, I guess all of the buildings leave this building intact so that you don't have to move out of here and while building a new building. So it's possible that tenant option could be used with any of the options. They would have somewhat different impacts on the site and the amount of parking, but it could be flexible.
I think one of the good things with any of the options is that we're fortunate we've got plenty of parking. All of the options wind up with somewhere between 90 and 100 parking spaces. That's more than sufficient for what we have here in the town offices with the police station, any event that might occur at the town, as well as any tenants that might go in another building. So, and we're counting I think it's 28 spaces next door as part of it. So I mean, really at this stage, we're obviously still at the very beginning stages of this effort. Would like to get the board's feedback on the options. If there's one that you like better than the others, please let us know that. If you don't like any of them, let us know that. If there's some other direction you'd like us to go, as we discussed a few months ago when the board approved the contract, one of the thoughts was just to get this process started to see what might be possible on the site, what it might look like, what it might accommodate. This does that. It also provides examples for us to take the potential funding partners, whether that be the state, whether that be the county, whether that be some other partner that's yet to be identified. So that's really the intent for the presentation tonight, is to let you look at these, provide your feedback, tell us what you like, what you don't like, provide some general direction. Obviously, we've got a lot of work to do going forward to make this a reality, but every significant effort has to start somewhere. As we've talked about before, and as is mentioned in the written materials, it's a significant cost. I mean, this is a big project. This will be the most expensive project in the town's history, I'm pretty sure. I've outlined some of the cost estimates for each of the options in the packet. Those were developed by Russ and by Jonathan for that. But essentially, you're looking at on the low end, somewhere in the $2 million range for option 3, potentially. And then you're all the way up to about $3 million for option 2, depending on how you structure it. Option 2A, for example, and 2B are 3.3 million at the high end. So these are, I think, reasonable estimates. Obviously, if and as we go forward, there'll be more detailed designs produced, more detailed cost estimates prepared, but just in terms of having the discussion at this point, these are reasonable numbers to kick around. We want to make sure that this building meets the town's needs for several decades. I expect this building will be here long after I've passed away, and probably most of us, maybe all of us in this room have passed away. I also look at this building as something that will hopefully present the positive image of Cape Carteret that I think you all would like in the future and our residents deserve in the future. It also presents a much more attractive streetscape along Highway 24 and really helps to make that whole corridor look a little nicer. Most of the buildings on Highway 24 now are newer. Our existing rental building out in front here is probably the oldest building out there. And it's all subjective, but probably the least attractive of the commercial buildings in Cape Carteret now. So, those are really the 3 main goals to achieve with this. One is meet the town's needs for the next 30, 40, 50 years. Number 2, present a positive image of the town. And number 3, improve the whole aesthetics of the Highway 24 corridor. So if you like what you see, please let us know. If you don't, let us know that too, and give us some direction, and we'll keep developing the ideas and concepts and certainly come back to you at the appropriate times.
Well, I personally think any one of them would work, but my biggest concern would be maintaining rental space for our current rental customers. Without that revenue, this I don't think we can achieve any of these. That's a substantial amount of revenue that we get. What is it, Frank? Every yearly revenue on those 2?
Yeah, right now it's about $60,000 on all 3 units. Yeah.
But you said that any one of these would accommodate potentially the tenants we have over here?
Well, I guess we haven't studied square footage, but any one of them could accommodate a tenant building in this building as an option.
That would require substantial upgrades and whatnot to accommodate those tenants.
Yeah, so we've got about 5,000 square feet in 3 different tenant spaces out on Highway 24. The Girl Scouts have about 4,000. Cult Life has about 1,000. This building, as it stands now, with this particular meeting room in here, is a little more than 4,000. The options that we were talking about was basically demolishing the boardroom piece and keeping the main structural elements. So I think that had about 3,200 square feet, if I remember correctly. So you wouldn't have quite as much tenant space, but you would have that option. I would certainly envision that whatever tenant occupied or tenants occupied the building, they'd certainly be responsible for any upfit on the inside. But obviously that would all be negotiated going forward. I will say that I think our current rental prices are pretty reasonable, pretty affordable. And so we probably could stand to raise those rents in the future, particularly if we have a nicer facility for people. So you may be able to get it to a point where it'd be close to a wash. And then certainly, I mean, the other option that we talked about early on was possibly building a mixed use building, right? And maybe including commercial rental space, office space, maybe even residential units in a larger building that also had the town hall and the police station. We certainly can take another look at that. We ultimately steered away from that based on some of the early direction that we wanted to basically focus on the Emergency Operations Center and try to secure some state or some county funding, but we could take another look at that option. I think the good news is we've got a lot of parking. That's helpful. I think we haven't done any detailed analyses of the septic system, but we've got a lot of land where we can put a nice drain field out there. So I don't think we have any serious concerns about being able to meet the septic needs. So that's kind of where it's at.
Well, for me, like I said, maintaining some type of rental property, looking further down the road, losing the revenue on the boat ramp in 7 short years, and looking at the big picture, being able to afford it. But any one of these four would work, in my opinion. So
Yeah, I think if we built the multi-use building, obviously we've got the construction cost of building the space that we would then lease out to people, to actually build the building. There are scenarios where maybe we wind up in some sort of condominium type arrangement with somebody who owns the additional space and contributes toward the construction, but then that probably doesn't bring you the rental income that you're looking. The advantage of taking this existing building and turning it into tenant spaces, you really don't have much in the way of additional construction cost, and you can kind of get it generating revenue fairly easily, fairly inexpensively. So.
Well, and another thing, if we were to obtain grants from the state or federal government, whatever, that would change the equation a lot too. We wouldn't be necessarily dependent on the rental income, but just throwing that out there. That's all. But I'm fine with
some
anyone.
money from the state to use that as a EOC for this end as well, and maybe see if we could talk the county into, bringing back, some of the stuff we had before with the, what do you call the guy? The magistrate, having the magistrate here.
Yeah. That certainly would change the equation.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. One other thing to mention. The direction provided to Russ, and he incorporated it in all four of the options, was to make sure that there was that capability for a more of a regional emergency operations center. Like, it's by design that the conference center and the break room and the bathrooms are all where they're located relative to the rest of the building, so that hopefully we can pitch this as a regional EOC for Western Carteret County. The other piece of it is it's a tough nut, right? I mean, it's a lot of money. And so we're going to have to be really creative and diligent in figuring out a way to finance this. I put some examples in the packet for you. I'm not at all suggesting you should do this, but I just wanted to give you the context. For example, if you issued $3 million worth of debt with a 20-year term, which I think would be reasonable, it's basically a debt payment of about $240,000 a year. So you're roughly 5 cents on your tax rate. I'm not suggesting we do that. I just want you to understand the magnitude of what we're looking at here. Obviously, the more state or county or outside funding you get makes that number more manageable. Obviously, the smaller the building, it makes that more manageable as well. But you got to start somewhere, right?
Oh, that being said, 10 years from now, that same building will probably almost double to build it. So we're just kicking the can down the road.
Exactly.
We know that the lifespan of this building is almost
non-existent
over. So. Yes, ma'am. Did you have a comment?
Yes, sir. Has any thought been given to pulling the rug out from under the Girl Scouts who just spent $60,000 renovating their rental space?
Well, it's all just conversation right now. We're not going to pull the rug out of anybody.
I'm just asking if anybody is aware that the Scouts have spent that kind of money.
Yeah, so that's a great point, and I want to make sure everybody understands that. So first of all, with the renewals of the lease for Cult Life and also the two new leases for the Girl Scouts, we set all of them up so that they all expire on the same date, which is September 30th of 2025. And the Girl Scouts, when they executed both leases, they were fully aware of this potential. And what I explained to the Girl Scouts at that time was, when September 30th of 2025 comes along, the town may tell you we're not going to renew the lease. But the town may also say, hey, you're welcome to extend it for another year. I would imagine it would probably be year-to-year leases. I think realistically, we're not going to be moving into a new building in the next year, right? It's going to take us some more time. So more likely than not, they'll be there beyond September 30th of 2025. But that was clearly communicated to them, multiple conversations. They made the decisions they made with that understanding, and they were comfortable with that. So.
Well, I think the first thing to do would be for the board to identify. I personally am not ready to make a decision on which one I like the best. I like them all, but which one the board would like, and then go from there and obtain estimates for building it. So.
Yeah, and I would say you don't have to make a decision tonight. I mean, you certainly can think on this, consider it further, talk with each other. If there is general feedback that you want us to improve on, I mean, please share that. If really we can move on whatever timetable the board's comfortable with.
Well, I think some of the commissioners, from what I'm getting the gist of, have already decided which one they may want, and that's fine if they want with me. Like I said, I'm good with either one of them. So if there's a consensus among the to be or not to
Well,
be.
I like certain things about each one. But with number 2, on 1 and 3, you have like the emblem of Cape Carteret, looks attractive from the road. On the second one, it's kind of, can we change that look?
Yes, definitely. We can incorporate the emblem if that's something that's important. Yep.
I just think curbside appeal is just kind of, like the third one looks strong to me. But the first one looks kind of beachy. So I was like,
Yeah, so you'd mentioned about the second one. I mean, the glass could be changed where you could maybe make this a larger space and put the emblem there, or maybe make the tower a little taller and put it up here. There's lots of options for that.
Do we have any input from the police department on what will work better for them, or if they have opinions?
Yeah, absolutely. So Chief Silva was involved in the discussions with Russ and with Jonathan. He and I have also had several conversations as well. And in fact, all of the elements included in the police station are things that he identified and that they thought would be helpful going forward.
But he doesn't have a preference.
Yeah, I don't think he has a preference on any of these options. He's pleased with the items that we've included in each of the options, which they essentially have distinct offices for the chief, the sergeant, for the detective. We've got individual spaces for each of the patrol officers, and then we've got extra offices built in for future growth. We've got holding cells. We've got an intoxilizer room. So there's a lot of features in there that I think he's very pleased with and hopes that they'll make it to the final version, whatever that may be. One thing I did want to mention to the board that's sort of periphery to this, you mentioned the magistrate. And so actually Chief Silva's working with county officials to basically implement a virtual magistrate so that they would not have to travel to Beaufort. They could link up electronically, sort of via Zoom, essentially. And that should be implemented here real soon and should be a good step. We certainly can work toward installing a magistrate in this part of the county, but I think that's got some real promise to be helpful. So I just wanted to share that.
where's our post office logo?
We would be happy to lease this building to the post office or any other building, any other tenant space we may have. So.
I'm with, well, I think I like option 2, but I'm kind of with Steve on this. I'd like to know where we're going to come up with $115,000 in revenue deficit here in the next coming years to figure out, or before we decide on construction and which one and stuff. But as far as my favorite, I like number 2 because I think it's got a smaller like physical footprint. That's just why I like it. So that's just my 2 cents.
I like 2B. So I want to keep this building for future rental, because we're gonna need to have revenue coming in. I like that it's 2 stories. 2 stories traditionally is a lot less expensive to build than 1 story, although number 1's beautiful and so is number 3. I think functionality wise, 2B would be the option that I would like to see us go after.
It has an elevator that the other 2 don't, which adds a cost element.
ADA.
Yeah, I was going to say ADA.
And a stair
add to the
core.
cost.
Yeah.
So it's the largest of the options because of that, but which also makes it the most expensive.
Yeah, well, I mean, but it's ultimately you're using the square footage to the maximum. The only wasted space is literally the elevator.
Right.
But we need an elevator if we're going to do 2 stories.
Yep.
But what you also gain 3,200 square feet in rental. Yeah.
That's what I was looking at, Cameron.
Thank you.
Great
Any more
job. Thank you.
questions for the
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
architects?
Thank you all.
I love the design though, all three of them.
Yeah, you did a great job.
Do you have a picture of the back doors that you're talking about?
The glass doors?
There's not a picture, but we can get you one if you need one.
Okay. Christmas tree. A Christmas tree?
So I heard two of you basically express a preference for option 2. I didn't hear a preference from the other, 2B. It's- you-
Well,
It's in front of like.
yeah. 2 or 2B, I'd like to figure out the revenue. I mean,
Sure.
maybe magic happens and we don't need 2B, for the rental space. I don't know.
Well, you gotta look at it like the town may have to bear the entire expense. That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, 100%.
If we get a grant or what have you.
Yeah.
That's out the window, but that said, I mean, it's always nice to have the revenue and.
So, I mean, if that's the concern, option 1 also gives us, because it says demolish after the fact. And matter of fact, in option 1, the existing building is further away from the new building.
Well, that's what he said. He said if we were really concerned about that, we could probably keep it in all options. I just like the reduced physical footprint by it being 2 stories.
One looks beachy though.
Yeah, I mean,
We are kind of close.
Yeah, it's like her side hill.
So I think generally what I'm hearing from you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing from you is that you're generally pleased with all 3 of the options in terms of the general appearance, the flow, the elements that are included in the buildings. I'm hearing a desire to maintain some tenant income in the future. And I'm also hearing I think a slight preference for the 2-story building, option 2B, realizing that that's a little bit larger, potentially a little bit more expensive. But if I'm understanding y'all correctly at this stage, and I certainly don't expect you to make any decisions on this tonight, I will sort of run with that general direction and spend some more time working on a financing plan that might help us achieve that, talk with you some more about it, and kind of keep refining that unless you'd like me to go a different direction.
I think that's a fine general direction. My concern is that given that we have the option basically to preserve rental income in any of these options, are we getting $1 million more worth out of the most expensive option than, or are we not going to, at $2 million or whatever it comes out to be, are we not going to end up with what we're looking for and not have spent an extra $1 million? So, I mean, that's just kind of where I sit on it right now. And I'm not opposed vehemently to anything, but we do have to pay for this at some point.
Absolutely.
Could I just clarify one thing? Option 3 was using the existing building for the police department.
Yep. Yeah.
So actually, it would not work for option 3.
Yes. Okay.
So between option 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So the difference in cost is somewhat less. Just want to clarify.
One thing to point out about option 1 is that if we kept this building and did use it for tenant space, that basically precludes the opportunity to have the event lawn the way that it's configured right now, because that event lawn with the garage doors is opening up to basically the area where this building is now. Now, having said that, we may be able to kind of slightly reconfigure the 1-story option and come up with a way to make that happen too. But as it's presented here, that would be a casualty of that. But I absolutely agree with you. I mean, even if it's $2 million, it's a big number, right? $3 million is an even bigger number. We're going to have to really get the pencils out and figure this out. So.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, we might buy grants and this all be a moot point. We can have a big shiny building as much as we want, but right now we don't have those options in front of us. Granted, we have to have something like this to get those in play, but
We need we need to identify the building we want, obtain estimates for the building, and then seek grants and whatnot, financing. That's the steps we need to take.
Absolutely. But like I said.
All right. Well, very good. I appreciate the feedback, and thank you, Russ and John, for being here. So.
Yes, thank you, guys. Great work. Let Brett retrieve the microphone for Frank. You're doing a great job too, Brett. Thank you. All right, my favorite discussion. Desired changes to the boat ramp pass program. And anybody that's been coming to these meetings for the past several years realizes that we've tried so hard to simplify this process, but we're not going to make everybody happy in the end. But anyway, go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, just very briefly, we're now actually 80 days away from selling the boat ramp passes for 2025 on November the 1st. If you would like to make any changes to the program for next year, I'd like to identify those either tonight or maybe at the September meeting, just in case there's anything we have to change before we put them on sale, and really just to give us enough time. So some of the other conversations I had with y'all individually suggested it might be helpful for you all to have a group discussion about any changes that you'd like to make to the boat ramp pass program. I included a lot of different information in there for you. I won't go through all of those things, but if you have questions about how the program works currently, I'm happy to answer those. And again, if you think it's great the way it is, we'll proceed, start selling November 1st. If there are things you'd like to change, please just let us know that, certainly over the next couple of months. So.
I got two changes I'd like to put before the board to think about. I'd like to go back to the trailer stickers. And also, given the fact that there's been like 20 some new homes built in town, just guess half of them may have a boat. I think we need to raise the cap to 300. That's the two things I'd like to change.
Okay.
If the board agrees.
On the trailer sticker, I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying that it is so much easier to enforce being on the vehicle. So, does the chief have any comments as to, and again, I'm not saying I disagree with you, as to enforceability? Enforcement is some of this too. I mean, if we raise the cap to 300, we're really only able to park 10% of that. So we're hoping that only 10% show up in one day. So enforcement is some of this too. Does the chief have any comments on is he okay with the sticker being a trailer sticker?
Yeah, so I think ultimately the chief and the police department will do whatever the board believes is best. But having said that, it's definitely easier to enforce when the sticker's on the windshield because the truck's typically facing out. You can just kind of go right by and see the sticker in the windshield. But we can make it work if it's on the trailers also. I mean, it was that way for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
Just requires a little bit more effort to get out and look for that sticker. So I don't know that he's got any super strong feeling about it. So.
Well, people trade vehicles throughout the year. They very seldom trade or get a new boat. So that said, and also it eliminates the maybe commercial people test driving boats and whatnot with just one truck and bring, that's just my thought process.
I think that's a good thought, and
it worked for years.
It did. It did.
Well, we tried the truck thing, but I've heard more complaints about this year with the stickers than I have previously. And here again, it's just a matter of because the thing last year was about, well, I've got two boats, and so we're not going to make everybody happy with every situation, but I'm sort of with you, Steve, on going back to the trailer.
I'm with you, Steve, on the trailer. I'm with you on the trailer.
I didn't quite understand.
I'm with you
on
the trailer.
And
Is
I'm
there
good
a
with it.
sticker on the truck and the trailer?
No.
Just, okay.
Either or.
Right
So
now,
this
just
year
the truck.
we went to the trucks this year,
Okay.
putting them on the truck.
Oh, I thought there was like in the match.
Yeah.
I don't have a truck.
And a lot of complaints, everybody's right. A lot of complaints were, will I have, my son might pull it to the ramp or my wife might pull it, and while they're only showing up with one boat, and that's what we're really, trying to accomplish with this. And I think it's a good argument. They have one boat, but they pull it with multiple vehicles. And so to have to pay the initial pass price and then an additional pass was what, $50?
Correct.
Yeah. That could be costly for a family. So
Our neighborhood boat ramps had trailer stickers since inception, and this worked. Nobody's ever had any complaints.
I think I voted against going to the vehicle last year. I don't know. Something's not broke, don't fix it. Don't try to fix
Other than those two, well, first of all, let me ask you this. Is there any concern about going from 285 to 300 with the cap?
Well, if we got 20 new homes, I think.
Well,
that's
I think we,
only a
I
fair
think we
thing.
need to provide, the 20, you said what, 22 homes built?
In the last fiscal year, yes.
I mean, just assume that half of them have a boat or a quarter of them have a boat. I mean, it's just only fair to, I mean,
Yeah, I understand. What
285 is such an odd number anyway, you know?
what I expect to do is take your feedback tonight, and then I'll put it in formal resolution and present it to you at the September meeting agenda if you're ready for it. Then just trying to understand. I certainly understand your position on this. I want to make sure I'm understanding the consensus of the board on these.
How many people have you fined $1,000?
Oh gosh, it's more than I've expected, but I don't have an exact number for you. I think it's probably been 8 or 9, which I'll get you the exact number later, but it was more than expected. The other thing I would say to you is we've had an issue, with the switch to the vehicle stickers. We've had an issue, and this happened in Emerald Isle with the beach driving stickers. We had an issue where people were not affixing the sticker to the windshield, and they were simply moving it from vehicle to vehicle. Now, I hope that they were moving it to another family member's vehicle, but nothing would prevent them from sending some else. And we've issued plenty of $50 tickets for that also, because they have the pass. Whereas you can't really share the sticker if it's on the trailer.
And that was my situation. I've been using the Jeep, and then I was using my other car, and I went and scraped it off, and I couldn't get it to, so I just stuck it right there on the thing. But here again, ignorance of the law does not constitute. But it just, to me, I think I go back because we've tried both, and I applaud the other board for trying to fix the situation. But I just think we need to just go back to the way it was and leave it alone. But I do think that we need to revisit, just like Steve said, every year things do change. So I think it's a great idea to just have this as a recurring issue, just to come up, this time of year, to, if there are any things, changes, like say, with the population, whatever, to create the 300s. I think you got a consensus.
Are there any other changes you all would like to consider?
No, but I want to jump ship for just a minute. But next month, would you put the golf cart issue? I think we need to discuss that too. No. Or we can do it right now. But that's no. Let's add that for next month.
I'd be happy to, if you'd like to have a group discussion about that, sure. So.
Yeah, I got an issue with golf carts I'd like to bring up at next meeting.
All right, well, I'll package up the official decision with that input today, and I'll present that to you in September. So thank you.
Okay. And next up is the town manager report.
Okay, as always, lots of written materials in there. A lot of stuff just kind of in process, and just want to keep you updated along the way as some of these things move along. First thing, just a reminder, the final Sounds by the Sound concert Wednesday night. Hopefully we'll have some decent weather for that on Wednesday. Looking forward to seeing Small Town perform at that. The vegetative debris collection is underway right now, and they are making exceptional progress. They're already through the entire town with the exception of Bayshore Park. So I expect they'll finish up in the next couple of days, and appreciate their hard work on the debris collection.
That's fast.
As we talked about, I expect the construction of the trail segment on Highway 58 to get started right after the Labor Day holiday. Looking forward to that. We are going to be soliciting construction bids for street resurfacing. Again, we're looking at 2 segments in Old Cape Carteret, one on Anita Fort Drive between Neptune and BoC Sound, and then on Yopon, generally between Deer Creek and Neptune Drive. So we'll bring you we'll bring you bids for those at some point in the next couple of months. Lots of other things in here. Ryan and his crew at Public Works and also Sunland did a good job cleaning out ditches and driveway culverts on Lejeune Road. Thankfully, we didn't have any significant issues there over the last week. With your action tonight on the consent agenda with the easement for the existing pump over at Loma Linda Court, we're down to 3 locations left on the original 12 identified by the board a couple years ago. So continuing to chip away at those. Hopefully we'll get the last 3 fixed. There's certainly other locations in town that need attention, but these are the 12 that were on the original list that was provided. And the last thing I would say is, we had a tropical storm last week that was really just a lot of rain spread out over 4 or 5 days. By our estimates, when you add it all up, including the rains from the weekend that were really more associated with a front coming through, somewhere in the 10 to 12 inch range cumulative over the various 4 or 5 days. Generally, things worked really well. I think one thing that we just got lucky that we had periods of a lot of rain really quick, and then we had some time for it to move on out and soak on in. So we got lucky in that sense. We didn't really have any significant problems. We had an issue that I briefed the board about via email about the pipe leading from Star Hill Drive out to Pettiford Creek. Thank you to Ryan for his great efforts to resolve that, and thank you to Sunland for coming out and clearing out that pipe. We had some obstructions. We still need to get in there with a camera, and Ryan's working on that right now and want to see what else is in there, but it flowed much, much better after we had them come and clean that out. So otherwise, I feel generally pretty good. Certainly, whenever you have events like that, you're going to have some standing water in different parts of town. So the good news is I think overall we were lucky and things worked reasonably well. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have about anything else in the packet or anything else about the town.
I got a question. The steering committee for the bicycle and pedestrian plan, is that meeting here?
It's actually going to be a virtual meeting via Zoom, and it's later this month. I believe it's on a Wednesday. I can get you the Zoom link if you'd like that. We'll publicize that. So.
And how did the kayaks do during the storm? Did people take them off? Or did they leave them?
They left. Most of them were just left. Luckily, it wasn't much of a wind event. I know last time we had a wind event, I reached out to Sean, tried to reach out to whoever owned the pass, just give them a heads up. Hey, just a reminder, your kayaks down there, we got that storm coming.
Okay.
Suggest you take it down. Gotcha. Now they were on it. There was a couple that kind of blew it off, but some people put locks on them and stuff. So you can't, take it off, but set it back up there. We were fine.
And I guess there was an incident last week or something. I kept getting pictures of at night somebody's car was like down in the ramp. It's like a Cherokee, the boat ramp. So I don't know. Did you guys? Are you shaking your head?
Yeah, I was actually there. Someone parking brake gateway.
Oh. Oh, that's got to suck.
Well.
Okay. Nothing we need to address.
Oh, they only happen in Florida.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know what to do with that. Okay.
Any more questions for Frank? All right, if not, then we'll move on to the commission reports, and we'll start with you, Steve.
I'd like to thank the planning board and Frank for taking up this task with trying to make the necessary changes to the UDO that we need. And I know it's a tough thing to do, but I think we're making progress, and thank the planning board for taking it up.
Charlie? Okay, John?
I'd like to thank the planning board, because I know as former planning board chair, and Will and Cameron, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and we really don't understand it until it comes here. So, Paxton, to you and your group, thank you. I want to say to Ryan, great job. I'd like for us to look into, and I've seen them, where they have nets on the bottom or on the end of pipes going into like Pettiford Creek, Deer Creek, would collect stuff like garbage, roots, whatever, in storm events, so that we don't have a lot of garbage going into the waterway. I think I know they're reusable, so it might be something for us to look into. And the other thing is I noticed Adam during the storm on Friday was cleaning out a vent over there by the bridge. in a yellow t-shirt, do we have yellow rain slickers for them to wear so that if they are out in the rain, that they're visible? We do have it? I just,
We do have some.
okay, I just asking because
Yeah.
if not, I'd like to see you get some. Safety's very important. And thank you for the great job you do. And the police department, thank you.
I do have a question. Have we heard anything about SRO?
I spoke with Sheriff Buck last week. He said they had not yet decided on what their approach would be going forward. He did say they were looking into certain things. So.
Well, I was just wondering, I keep hearing chatter. And I just like to thank Dunn and Dalton, y'all they're making our job hard to decide which one is our best fit. So, good job. And then I'm very passionate about not having this vape shop. Anybody who knows me knows the deal. But if you get a chance, you've never been in a vape shop, please walk in one, check it out, so you're aware and you know what's going on. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, so I thought that was a good presentation from Carteret County Health Department. I have kids, and so some of that is kind of scary. I guess considering the commercials that we had in the 90s and how tobacco industry got in trouble for it, I don't even know why we're still talking about this. So it's amazing to me, but we are. So thank you, Mr. Russ Woods. I appreciate that. Or did he already leave?
He left.
Oh, dang. Well, thank you, sir. I thought that was a good presentation. Gives us a lot to think about and a lot to consider. So thank you, and I thought that was good. That's it.
All right. And reiterate what everybody else said about the planning board and the staff. Man, Ryan, you guys, every time I go out and there's just somebody working, somebody doing something, and the storm prep, getting everything done, that's a lot of work, man. So kudos to you and the staff, town staff, all in general, police. Everybody's doing an awesome job. We got a little town, but we got, it's a big heart for this little town. A lot of great things happening. And I am blessed and honored to be here. And hopefully Wednesday we can get this concert going out here, small town, and Capone's Taste of Chili will be, Taste of Italy. Man, forgive me. It's been a long day. Taste of Italy. And he does great baked ziti if you like that sort of thing. Awesome. So hopefully we'll be able to have that. And thank this board for all the great work they've done. It's been very challenging this past year, but I think some great decisions have been made, and look forward to the future. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, second?
One second.
All right, all in favor. And thank you for being here. It's your town.